What if I said to you, you could be achieving more by doing less? It sounds kind of counterintuitive, right? But sometimes I do notice that I have good ideas when I'm deliberately kind of doing nothing. So what is this idea of learning effortless action? Psychology consultant and author Dr. Jo Lukens is with me now. Good morning.
Good morning, Susan.
So what do you mean by effortless action in relation to getting things done?
It's an interesting term, isn't it? Because sometimes we talk about being on autopilot.
Yes.
And we don't always talk about that in a positive way.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I made that mistake. I was on autopilot. But when we're talking about effortless action, it's when we've got a few of those well-learned skills that we have. They run a bit more on sort of automatic pathways, if you like, and they don't require as much of our brain power. So then if we're not using as much of our brain, then it does free us up then, like you just said, to read the situation or to adjust to our conditions, helps us make better decisions, and we're doing less micromanaging in our own brains.
We've got a bit more brain space.
We do. It gives us space. We still get things done and the things that we want to get done, but we can use our brain power for the tasks that really need it.
So can doing less actually help the brain perform better?
Definitely. So we know that when we're constantly pushing, and I think there's many of us that will be nodding our heads to this one, you know, when we're really trying to remember things and everything becomes very effortful. Of course, all of those things are very limited. They're a very limited pool capacity that we have. So when we do less, then it makes sense, as you said earlier, that we reduce that mental load on ourselves, and that allows the brain to process information better, and we respond a bit more flexibly and usually in a better way.
What are some of the signs that maybe somebody's putting in too much effort?
So I don't know if anyone's ever done this, but if anyone's ever had perfectionistic tendencies, they've ruminated over things, which means that they've got stuck on why that thing went wrong or what's going in that particular situation, that sense that whatever I'm doing isn't ever good enough, even when the results are good, we know those are some of the things that we're probably overplaying that particular scenario. So we often see that because we get tired of making decisions, we feel maybe a little bit irritable, and sometimes say that we find it hard to switch off.
Hearing from psychology consultant Dr. Jo Lukens, I'm sure a lot of people relate to some of the things that you were describing just now. How does this idea connect to things like flow?
Yes, so flow is a really interesting concept. It's been around for a very long period of time, and it's a short word first coined by someone with a very long surname, which was Mahalya Csikszentmihalyi, which I do remember from a university test in the 1990s. It was the one thing that I'd
Speaking of things we remember,
committed to memory. But flow, very simply, is that state where nothing feels particularly effortful, but it goes well. So we often see athletes experience this, high performers experience this, where you are going through the motions of doing the thing that you do it well, and it's going to sound a bit strange when I describe it this way, but it's almost like can almost feel like a bit of an out of body experience in connection with the task, and you're not flooded obviously with stress or distracted, and so it's really focused and smooth is probably the best way to describe it.
You mentioned there some of those attributes of that perfectionism and overthinking. That tends to go hand in hand with not feeling like you can ever do enough. So then how do you do less?
Yes. So first of all is you recognise that that's what's happening. You recognise that you're constantly pushing. You're recognising that maybe the way you're interpreting your own behaviours and what you're doing isn't particularly helpful for you. So that's a really good place to start. And then it's about thinking about what's the most helpful thing that I can do in this situation? What is the task that would serve me best? And are there ways that we can get some of those habits and pathways going so we do them consistently well? If you look at a daily task, brushing your teeth, like we don't have to think about the process of that, even though there's quite a few steps to it when you actually think about the mechanics of how you do it. So as long as we're paying a little bit of attention while we're doing it and we get those back molars done, as long as we're doing that, then that's a good example of that effortless action in just a very small daily task.
How does this play out in high pressure situations?
Yes, so this is what high performance and high pressure people are preparing for all of the time, because what you want to be able to do is you want to be able to make decisions in a moment, and you can really only do that if you understand the basics of the task. If you are the elite basketballer, it's dribbling the ball down the court is something you don't want to have to think about because you want to be making decision making about where to throw the pass to or whatever it is. Someone who's working in a mining environment will obviously have their daily tasks that they're needing to do that they want to have automated for themselves in a way,
Yes.
so that they can respond to the situations. And of course, in defence settings, it makes sense. That is a really important skill as well.
So for those of us who might want to test it out, what's the very first step we need to look at here?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is understanding that our brain's only got so much capacity is a good place to start. And so that making small changes. So finding ways just to, I guess, reduce some of the clutter, the things that aren't helpful for us. And you've probably heard me say the word helpful half a dozen times, even in this conversation, but it's such a good way to look at the way we choose to speak to ourselves. Is what I'm saying to myself right now helpful? Yes or no? And if it's helpful, continue with it. But if it's not, try and adapt that. We can do little tasks like that, and that helps us with the cognitive load.
Yeah, there's lots of little things, and I think even just starting to maybe even think of some of those things that you kind of do on autopilot might help you kind of get to try those other things as well.
That's
maybe.
right. And the more we can practice those things and we can rehearse those things, the more automated they become for us.
I guess that's why we do refreshers for things like our first aid courses and stuff.
Exactly.
Oh, it's very good to think about. Psychology consultant and author Dr. Jerry Lukens, thank you very much for being with me
Thank you,
today.
Susan.